Ross. Welcome to This Is Horror.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and goodness, you've written so many amazing books that the most difficult part about this conversation will be kind of where to even go with this journey. But in terms of the starting point, we're starting where we always do. I want to know, what were some of the early life lessons that you learned growing up?
Well, um, some of the early life lessons from my dear father were to work very hard. Um, if someone hit you, you hit them back harder. Um, lots of toxic masculinity going on in my household when I was younger. Um, but I think one of the things I learned it the hard way, is that writing and reading didn't really come easy for me in my kind of early childhood. Um, and I would kind of like, as a lesson, like if anyone is listening to this and finds it difficult to write or read or, find pleasure in books, is that you can persevere past that and you can discover the love for it that I have. Like when I was at school, like I always found it so challenging. Like I think I'm undiagnosed kind of dyslexic because when I was at school, they didn't bother checking. They just let you just struggle. Um, so it's always been something. And then I always thought I was lazy because I didn't quite understand grammar and spelling and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then I got to secondary school, struggled all the way through it. And then I had an English teacher that put me off reading like forever, like for a really, really long time. And it was all because I don't know if they do it in America, Bob, but like in England, when you're doing your GCSEs, they make you read aloud in the class, and everybody does it like a little bit of it, and it goes around. And I absolutely hated it because whenever I talk when I'm reading or reading out loud, like I stutter and I stumble over words. And every time I did it, my teacher was just like, right, you need to start again. And I was like, and then I'd try and read again and I'd get worse and worse and worse. And then the teacher was just like, oh, just move on to the next person. And then I just gave up reading and I didn't read for play. Like I read comics. Comics were my happy place. But like books just didn't interest me at all. And I just, yeah, if I didn't read for pleasure until I got married in like 2007. So like the whole time I was just like not reading books at all. And then my wife was like, I never see you reading. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to read. I'm not finding anything interesting to read. And she was like, you need to find one book. And if you find that one book, it will just unlock everything. And I believe there is a book out there for everybody who doesn't like reading. There is a book that will turn you on, let's say. And yeah, my book was that I read that made me fall in love with reading again was James Fry's A Million Little Pieces, which just blew my mind when I read it because it's all written in like, I don't know if you guys have read it. Have you read it?
I've not read it, no.
No.
It's like, obviously there was a whole Oprah issue around it because like when he wrote it, his publisher said to him, it was a fiction book. And then his publisher said, oh, this would work really well as a memoir. And he was like, okay, like if I just wrote a book, but if you want to classify it as a memoir, and then he got in trouble for Oprah because it was a memoir and stuff in it didn't really happen. But the book was written in such a like different way, like it unlocked in my mind, like just, oh, actually you can write and make it look how you want it. Like it's really short sentences, like one word on a line, and then the next line's got like three, and then back to one word. And I was just like, oh wow, you can have fun with writing. I didn't know that was like a thing. But yeah, like that was amazing. And like he's blurbed a book for me now, and I'm just like, that's like mind blowing. But yeah, the kind of lessons. I never had a filter either, so like I was like diving into loads of horror very young, like horror films. So not having a filter is quite good. Although my children have a filter because it's damaging. But yeah, there's some of the lessons. I know how to bricklay as well. But that's a story for another day.
Well, I mean, these are long podcasts, so it might be a story that we get back to. But as this is not the This Is Bricklaying podcast, we'll put that on hold for now. I wonder, with the James Frey book, A Million Little Pieces, you said that was the one that really unlocked it for you. What made you pick up that specific book? And were there a number of books beforehand that had been false starts? So did you kind of luck out with your first attempt in 2007 to get back on
Um,
the reading train?
it was recommended to me by my wife. So she was a heavy reader, and she was just like, I think knowing kind of what I was like, because I'd been dabbling in writing before then, and like I used to write quite a lot of really, like, my stuff's dark, but like before I used to write really dark stuff and it was just short stories. But I wrote them to offend people because I thought offending people was cool. Um, Turns out it's not so. But I used to write some really dark stuff just to like. I used to write really grisly things that I was just like, yeah, that's going to make people feel really sick. That's really cool. And my wife had read those, and she was just like, "You've got a real talent," but she's like, "Some of this stuff, I'm just like not checking in with." And she was just like, "Look, read this book. I think this book would be good for you." Like, because it's about like a guy who goes to, like, he's an addict, goes to a drug facility to kind of detox, and it's kind of like the stories that he has there, the people that he meets. It's kind of like more of a kind of like recovery story that's almost a little bit like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but kind of separate. And then he like meets his friends there. Like there's a guy called Leonard, and then the second book James Fry wrote was called My Friend Leonard. So then I read that afterwards as well. There were a couple of books I tried to read. Like I thought if I wanted to read, I should probably read some classics. So I attempted Dracula. Found it really boring. And then I have gone back and read that since though, and it was better than I first thought it was. And Portrait of Dorian Gray. I kind of read that and thought it was okay, but I still didn't have the bug. I was just like, nah. And then I read a Shirley Jackson book as well, but I can't remember which one it was. Not what's the one about the poison? I can't remember what that one's called.
We've Always Lived in a Castle.
Yes, that one. So I started reading that one, but I think I started and stopped that one about 3 or 4 times. And then I discovered James Fry, and I was like, oh. And then soon after him, I then discovered Chuck Palahniuk, who's a friend of the show, I don't know. And he blew my mind as well. And I was just like, right, this is kind of the stuff I want to read. Like, and then just kind of just carried on reading. Like when I was really little, well, I say really little, when I was about 11, I read Stephen King's It, but it took me like forever to read it. And then I went to secondary school, and then she ruined reading for me. But yeah, so then, James Fry got me into it again. And then, Chuck Palahniuk. And then lots of like Richard Thomas. And then I kind of like just started kind of just because I love horror. Like I'm such a fan of it that I was just like, and I was like picking up like authors that I'd not heard of, like quite a lot of indie stuff, but I didn't know what indie was then. I was just like, oh, this person's got a good book, let me pick that one up. And then just the kind of love affair with books carried on, and now I just can't stop reading, which is like I've turned a corner. Like I just read everything now, and like I love supporting writers and recommending books to like my colleagues at work and stuff like that. So it's great. Like I love it.
So this is such a non-linear and unconventional journey, and so there's so many points on that journey that I want to touch on. But something that I find quite interesting is, so as a child, you were not a big reader at all, but for some reason you decided to read It by Stephen King. So one of the biggest, kind of meatiest tomes that you could
Yeah.
find. So I mean, where on earth did that come from? You had Carrie a few
Yeah.
books down. That's a much slimmer volume. Why did you
The
go
thing
from not
was,
reading anything to picking up the biggest book in the store?
because I grew up in a house, like my dad is a voracious reader, like he reads like everything. And when I was growing up, we had this like big cabinet in our lounge. It was quite a huge thing, and it had those like the VHSs that look like books. So it was kind of like that, like all the way across one level, and then below that was my dad's kind of hardback collection. And so my mum used to buy him the hardback first edition Stephen King every time it came out. So he had them all, and they're all lined up, like all the old cool first edition UK covers and stuff like that. And I was just like, and I used to, and then he had those. He had the Exorcist first editions, like every kind of like horror, but like Sean Hudson, like he loved him. He had all these books as well, and then like James Herbert. Like I learned kind of just by looking at these covers that, and then their names like just on the spines. I was just like enamored with it, and I was just like, oh, what's this? And I pulled the covers out, and the one that used to scare the shit out of me was the old Misery cover, because it had her like kind of screaming on the cover, and then The Shining as well. But the It one was the kind of the UK cover's got the kind of house on the cover, and it's like bent and the clown, and it just intrigued me, and I was just like, oh, that's quite cool. And then when I read the back bit, I was just like, oh yeah, this sounds like my cup of tea. Because by that point I'd already like watched The Exorcist and stuff, so I kind of like had piqued my kind of interest in horror. So I was just like, oh, let's give this a go. And it literally took me. It must have taken me like a year to read it, because I wasn't the fastest reader, and also at that point I still kind of didn't really love reading. I was just I think I was reading it just to get through it and like complete a book. But yeah, like some of the stuff that happened in that like has stayed with me a long time. And I reread it recently as well. I think it was around the time the films were coming out, so I thought I'll go back and reread it. And I when I was reading it, I could still remember myself like laying on my floor in my bedroom, like with the book laid out in front of me. Like it just had like not pure nostalgia for me, like going back and reading it. But yeah, I think before that, like the only kind of book I'd read was like a picture book called Not Now Bernard. So it was a big step up. But yeah, it's great. Like and then the crazy thing about this story as well is that when I went to university. I went to university to study film, and I went to university, and then finished university, met my wife, got married, and then I said to my dad, "Oh, have you still got your Stephen King books? Can I have them if you're not gonna?" And he was like, "No, I got rid of them." And I was like, "What? All the first editions you had?" And he was like, "Yeah." He said, "I took them down to the charity shop. They seemed very happy about it." I was just like, "What are you doing?" And he just got rid. He got rid of all of his first editions, like Exorcist, like all the James Herberts, like every single first edition hardback. He got rid of, and I was just absolutely devastated. And I was just like, "What?" And so now I've had to, like, just trawl the internet and try and find them all again. Not his ones, obviously, but like just have to buy them all. So I've got them all, and now I have. But it's just, I was just like, "You just cost me loads of money, Dad." Like, what's going on? But yeah, so because he got a Kindle, he thought it was cool to like then just buy all the books he had already on a Kindle, and I was just like, "What are you playing at?" He's trying to be cool, he's trying to be hip, trying to be down with the kids, and I was just like, "Dad, you've just got rid of a lot of good books." Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely fine to read books on Kindle and then to have the physical artifact in, you don't have to choose. It's not like when you get the Kindle, there's terms and conditions, although maybe there are, because everyone clicks accept and we don't read. And it's like, right, you've now got to get rid of your physical books. But oh my goodness, all that money. he might as well have taken a wheelbarrow of money to a bonfire, because that's what
Mhm.
happened.
This is true.
Yeah, I've lost books that were like I considered collector's items, and and I bought them when they were new, and so they were relatively inexpensive, and I took really good care of them, and I lost them in a storm. We had a terrible hurricane, and they got water damaged, and so it's like you just basically throw them away, and so it's like I've slowly been picking them up, and spending a lot more fucking money than what I originally spent. It's like I remember. I mean, shit. I think for like all 6 volumes of the Books of Blood,
Oh,
I probably in the original little paperbacks, I probably spent like what $25 on them. Okay, I spent $25 on one book. So, but I mean, some good things have came out of that. I've got 3 of the British covers that they accidentally sent, and then one of the books is actually signed, which I didn't.
oh wow.
We didn't realize they didn't know either. Apparently, they never opened it up. But the guy who I was getting it from, my book dealer, he was like, "This one's signed too." And I'm like, "No shit, really? Wow!" And we matched the signature, and yeah, it's pretty much spot on. So I got that for like $15, and I was like, average price for that book was probably about $75. Long story short, your dad, like, what the fuck, man? Like, damn.
And then
But
it's quite funny because now he messages me like quite often when he's in a charity shop and he's like, "Oh, do you need this hardback?" I was like, "No, I've got it now. I've rebought it again."
there's another side to the story, and maybe in the future we will get the guest on the show. But there's somebody who they walked into a charity shop and they're like, "There's loads of first edition Stephen Kings," and they're like £1. So, this is your
Yeah,
tragedy, but I guess like somebody's tragedy is another person's joy, and that's what's
yeah.
going on here. But I mean, you were saying before, so yeah, as I weave together this puzzle of your writing and creative career, so even though you weren't reading a lot, you were still writing pieces. You were writing pieces primarily to offend people. Which I think at that kind of like late teenage, early 20s age, a lot of us have done, because we're pushing boundaries. We're seeing like, what can we do? And we're any reaction at that point is a good reaction.
Mm,
Later, we're like, we have to be maybe a bit more discerning as to the
yeah.
type of reaction we want. But were you at that point interested in kind of pursuing a creative career? Was studying film at university to go into filmmaking or screenwriting? What do the levels look like in terms of you arriving at becoming a writer?
Um, so I've always loved, even though I didn't love reading, I've always loved telling stories. And that was like, as a kid, like my dad worked a lot, my mum worked a lot, and I was kind of like, and my sister just kind of put up with me. So then, like, I kind of spent a lot of time by myself. So I used to like just play with my toys like loads, and I just set up like really long games that I'd play like the whole day long and stuff like that. Um, and they were really kind of in depth, and like I just used to play for hours on end. And then um, when I was at secondary school, I started doing media studies, and like I just like part of growing up, I used to watch westerns like all the time with my dad. Like on a weekend, that was kind of like what we did. Like we'd sit down, put a western on, watch it, and then when I went to secondary school, yeah, they did media studies later on. So I started doing that, and like one of the first kind of films that we studied was The Magnificent Seven, which I'd watched like about 500 times by then. I was like, oh yes, I know loads about this, and then it was just kind of like learning about kind of like films and the the big five and like how it all, like the whole kind of film industry, which I loved. Because I was I'm a bit of a film nerd. I've kind of like taken the books now and like left the film, but like for many years I was a massive film nerd, and like I just used to love it. And then I thought, oh, actually, I could, because I love creating stuff and I love like visually, I love kind of like picking things apart and things like that. So I was like, oh, actually, I could do some of this. And like in our media studies class, that we had to make like little short films and like move the camera from one end of the room to the other and like use all these different like crossfades and cuts and things and try and make it as interesting as possible. So we did all of that, loved it, and then we got to do like script writing as well in it. So then I started doing script writing, and then towards the end of my A levels, I was just like, I don't really know what I want to do at university. I love film. I love watching films. So I went to university to do media arts and video production at Thames Valley University, which is next to Ealing Studios. So I went there and did media arts as my kind of major and video production as my minor. And then just made films for 3 years. Just absolutely loved it. Learned kind of all the ins and outs of like how to edit, cut film, all that kind of stuff. And then unfortunately, by the time we finished university, most of what we'd learnt was rubbish because Danny Boyle had released 28 Days Later using digital camera, and then the whole world changed and no one really used film anymore. So that was fun. And then I did a little bit afterwards, like me and a couple of friends set up like a little production company. Like we just did a couple of like small shorts and independently funded stuff. And then kind of it was a really hard industry to get into. Like I did a few runner jobs, and kind of it was just, I was just like, I can't do this. Like it was just like, I can't work for free living in London. And then I kind of just stopped that kind of like film side of it. I did it as a little bit like kind of like making films as just for fun. But then I carried on because I loved the kind of script writing side of stuff. I was just like, oh, actually, let me try some short stories. And then I just thought, let's offend people. And then like I just used to just write little short stories. And at that point, I didn't know much about kind of the writing world. So I didn't know you could submit short stories to places. And I just kept them all as kind of like, and then I'd give them to friends and they'd read them. And then we'd just discuss them. And then a couple of them we turned into like little shorts, like film wise. But yeah, and that was something I just kept doing for years, just writing little short stories, and then set up a Storgy magazine with two of my other friends. So we set that up, or they set it up, and then I joined it. And then we used to kind of do a little bit where we'd, so the three of us would just randomly come up with a word like coaster, and then we'd send it to each other, and then each of us would have a week to just write a short story, and that's the title, Coaster. And then we'd all come back and then read our stories to each other, and it'd all be completely different. And that's kind of, I kept that going. We kept that going for years. So we had loads of different like stories, all the same title, but completely different. And then I don't know how far you want me to go in this to writing, but we carried on going. And then I think COVID struck, and then I was working. So I work at a homeless day centre. I manage a homeless day centre in Bristol. And then COVID struck, and I had loads more time on my hand because we could only open a certain amount of hours. So then I thought to myself, let's just try and write something a little bit longer than a short story. And then I wrote the novella Juniper. And then, that's kind of brings it up to where we are.
And the amount of books that you now have out is incredible to think that your long form fiction started with COVID, essentially.
Yeah. I was writing down my books earlier because I sometimes forget which order they were in. So I was just writing them down, and I was just like, I turned around to my wife and I was like, I've written like 14 books in 5 years. And she was just like, yeah. I was just like, yeah. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't know whether it was all the years that I had just been, because I had loads of sketchbooks with like ideas down in and things like that. Like I love like sketching out ideas and just having them there, and then choose one that comes like rises to the top. I don't know, whether it was years of just suppressed kind of like storytelling that's just been in there, but I think when I wrote Juniper, I was just like, oh, I like that. That was quite good. And then I then sat as soon as I'd kind of written it. So I'd written that book initially to be published through Storgy, because we were starting to publish some books, and I'd initially said I didn't want them to publish it because I didn't want it to be a vanity press. I was just like, if I'm going to release it, I'd like to kind of see if I can get anybody to, like an independent publisher, to publish it. And they said, look, we're not about vanity, but like, we really like your work. We'd like to publish it, but we want to kind of get an outside view on it to see whether we're just being friends and liking it or not. So I was like, okay, that's fine by me. Yeah, if you want to do that, that's fine. But there's no pressure from me. Like, if you decide it's not for you, that's fine. I'll take it elsewhere. And they sent it to a kind of well-known author at the time, who was a creative writing lecturer at a university in London. And I know of this person. I've read their work. And sent it off, and I was like, oh, that's quite exciting. Like, they're going to read it, see what it's like. And then I received back I think it was 3-page document telling me how awful it was, how I should put it on the shelf and never pick it up again, that I had no talent, that my grammar and everything else was off. How in anybody's right mind would anybody eat cats? Lots of other kind of like horrible, derogatory stuff that was very, very personal. And I was just, it brought back all those kind of like inadequacies of when I was younger and like English, and I was just like, oh shit, like this is bad. Like what am I even doing? And then like I spoke to my wife and I said, like, because she'd read it, and I said to her, look, I've just got this back. Like, can you read this email? Just let me know, like, if it's right or if I'm wrong. Like, I don't mind. Like, if it's true, let me know. And she read it and she was like, to me, it just sounds like jealousy. She was like, lots of it is not, it's really personal. It's not about the work. It seems like it's about you. And I was just like, okay. So luckily I didn't listen to that prick. And I went on and released it myself, and it did quite well. And I still have his email printed out in my desk, so I sometimes pull it out to look at for inspiration, to be like, fuck you. And also I was like, this guy is in charge of people who have gone to this university to learn how to write. And it seems like he doesn't like any writing that's not like his own. I was just like, you are a very toxic individual. I've never named this person. I will never do that. But I was just like, I can't believe that you're in a position of power over quite like, like kids basically who have gone to university to learn how to write, and you're going to basically cripple them before they even start. Luckily, I don't give a shit what people think. So I just went on and did it myself. And then as soon as did that, got that email, released the book, and then I was just like, right, I'm going to write a novel. And then I wrote a Bram Stoker nominated novel, Tome. And I was just like, yeah, sod you. but yeah, that's a long-winded answer to how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, goodness, what happened with that, lecturer at the university, I mean, it is a classic in how not to talk to your students. I and just not even to do with students, but just being a kind of good person and just how you frame something. You're allowed to be sent a piece and you don't respond to it. You don't like the topic. Obviously, the whole kind of cat eating thing is going to be a divisive issue. It's kind of funny you even mentioned it for people who haven't read the book. They're like, hang on, what? But that little detail might sell it to them. They're like, okay, what's going on there? But yeah, like, I think even just saying, you know what, I read it, I'm not the audience for this. I think you need to send it to someone to critique who's, more into dark fiction and horror. That is a much more reasonable way of approaching things. But, sadly, your story, your experience with this professor is not like an uncommon one. It's kind of, I've heard versions of this again and again. I've had personal encounters with professors who have tried to steer me away from horror, and it's just this snobbery and this argument that we, occasionally talk about on the podcast, where there is a sect of people who kind of denigrate horror and they think of it as lesser. And, you know, Frankenstein, Dracula, Shirley Jackson, this is all horror and literature. These are classics. So goodness, what an awful experience. But I'm glad and somewhat surprised that you managed to take that and to just kind of continue. And I suppose maybe getting that perspective from your wife was something that contributed to you understanding, okay, this isn't a me problem, this is a him problem.
Yeah, I think it's because I bounce ideas off my wife, and like she's kind of like a first reader for quite a lot of my stuff. She hasn't read the last few books because I keep writing too many for her to read. But like she's read them, and like I think she's read up to Devil's Pocketbook, I think, and then the rest she hasn't read. Um, but like she's always someone that I can kind of like give the book to and be like, can you have a look and read it and let me know what you think? And like horror's not her bag. Like she doesn't read horror. I forced her to read Bird Box and she absolutely loved it. But I was just like, yeah, like I trust her. She's so well read that she can point out if something's not right or not working right, or it's going to like offend people. Because I'm not about offending people anymore. But she'll be able to like be my kind of like voice of reason as well. Like, and there's been a time where I was writing a novel and I lost. I thought autosave was on, and I was writing. I think it was Scorched, and I was writing for absolutely ages one day, and then thought it was autosaving and didn't save, and I lost like 20,000 words, and I was just like, I was having a meltdown, and she was just like, look, it doesn't matter. Like you wrote it the first time. She was like, I know it's really bad, but you need to pull yourself together. You've written it once. You kind of know the gist. So when you sit down to write it again, you'll write it better. And then I was just like, okay, I needed to hear that because I just thought I'd lost the whole book. But yeah, like she's great. She's amazing. Yeah, and it's very encouraging. And I also think like maybe that letter and that kind of feedback I had, although it was hard to take at first, and I rubbish it as it's his issue, not mine. But I think it also fueled me on to not that I'm proving myself to him, but I'm proving that I can write, and it's not a fluke, or my kind of slice of horror is a bit different than others. Like it's a bit wordy. I think people use purple prose, but like I just love writing the way I write, and if people like reading it, then I'll carry on. And even if they don't, I'll just carry on. But yeah.
Yeah, and coming back to writing 14 books in 5 years. So I want to know, and I'm sure listeners want to know too. I mean, what what does a typical routine look like at the moment? And then how many of those 14 books did you write during the COVID period? Because I think that is an important caveat, because kind of different rules applied at that point. So
Yeah.
yeah, both COVID and then now what
So
it typically looks like.
during COVID, I would finish work at so I only work 4 days a week. So I do full-time hours in 4 days. So I have a Friday off, and that became my writing day, and that still is now. Even though my work have said, "Well, we'd like to open on this day," I was just like, I said, "I'm really sorry, but my writing has taken off, and that's the day I spend writing, and I do all my hours during the week." And they were like, "Okay, that's fine. We respect that. We want you to have that, so that's fine." So yeah, so Fridays are my kind of writing day. During COVID, so I'd go to work at 8 o'clock, finish at 12, and then I'd get back home and like do a bit of like homeschooling with the kids, and then I'd write from about 3 o'clock till 8 o'clock each night, and then because it was just something to do, and I was just like, that was like ingrained. Every day I'd get back and I'd write. Some nights I'd write like 1,000 words, some nights I'd write 5. Like it just depended on how it went. And then during COVID, I probably wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books during COVID. Like that's like, yeah, over like 2 years, I think. And then the rest just kind of in the time after that, which seems like a lot when I'm looking at it. But yeah, so like kind of my routine is Fridays is my day. Like I protect that. Like I know people have an issue with J.K. Rowling, but she said something that was like, to be a writer, you need to find the time that you want to write. You need to protect it as much as you can. And so Fridays is my day for writing. My kids are at school. My wife works on a Friday, so I'm basically in the house. No other, like, people will message me and be like, "Oh, Ross, do you want to come out for a coffee?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm writing." I must seem quite boring to them, but I'm like, "No, I'm writing. It's my day." So yeah, I'd get up, have some breakfast, sit down at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd write until about 3 when my kids came home. And that's been the routine pretty much all the way up till now. There were 2 exceptions. One was The Devil's Pocketbook, because I kind of told someone that I'd written more of it than I had. And they seemed very interested in it for particular reasons, which I can't really talk about. So then I needed to, because they said, "How long will it take you to write it, seeing as you've done 30,000 words of it already?" And I'd only just had the idea. So I was just like, a typical book normally takes me about 2 months if I'm sitting down and concentrating on it. And they were like, "Okay." And then they took that date as the date, and I was just like, "Oh shit." So then like every day I was coming home from work, and I'd work all day, and then like I said to my wife, like I said, "Look, I did a bit of a boo-boo. Told someone that I was gonna, like, I'm ahead, I'm not, so I need to sit down." So then every day I was getting home from work, so I'd work all day, get home at like 5, eat, sit with my kids for a little bit, and then I'd go up and like from 6 till 9 every day in the evening, I'd be pounding keys, getting it all written, and then I'd have my full day on a Friday to write. And so I did all that, and that was good. And then the other book, which isn't released yet, it's on kind of submission at the minute, is my Western, A Few Vials More, which, because I love Western, as I've said previously, it's always been something I've wanted to write, and I had an amazing idea for it. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do when the time is right. And then a couple of years ago, I was like, yeah, time's right, let's do it. And I decided to use an old-fashioned typewriter to type the whole manuscript. And I just basically every moment I got, I just sat because I loved the tactileness of it and moving the paper and the ding and the bell and all that. So I was just loving life. Although my wife kept on telling me I looked like Angela Lansbury because it kept on like, she was like, you just look like you're on like the thing where she throws the paper. I can't remember what it's called. That TV show she did about murder. But I was just like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's a funny joke. And then, but yeah, I would just spend like as much time as I could on it. And I loved it. But generally, all my books are written on a Friday. And again, and the kind of the development of how I have written them has changed a lot because I used to just write the whole book from start to finish. I think mainly just to get it out of my head because it's just too busy sometimes with all the ideas I've got. So I just write all the way through, not worry about spelling errors, just get to the end. And then I think after about 3 books, I was just like, bloody hell, this editing is taking forever. So then I started to do, I think it's called like the Lansdale technique, where you kind of read back the last bit you wrote and you edit it and then you fresh to go in the next. So I started doing that and it is an absolute lifesaver. I love it. It always gets me back in the zone as well. So I'm just fresh to write. And yeah, it just makes the manuscript so much easier to work with like afterwards. Because I'd probably say I spent more time re-editing my earlier books than I did writing them because it was just, I've already said my spelling and punctuation's awful, but it was just too much. And I was just like, I'd rather spend my time writing than doing this. So I'm just going to make sure I do it right the first time. And I've kind of kept that technique going through the rest of kind of the books from Devil's Pocketbook onwards. And it's, saved me so much time. And also getting a good editor has also saved me so much time.
Okay, so I've taken some notes because there's a lot to kind of get to here, but kind of the quick version seems to be, so you've written about 9 books in the last 3 years, so we'll say about 3 per year. You take about 2 months to write it, 2 months after is editing. However, and this is the bit that's probably going to blow most people's minds, you're primarily only writing on Fridays between 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. And the method that you're kind of now using going forward is what you've termed the Lansdale technique, where you read like a page or a chapter before to orientate yourself, to edit the previous day's work or the previous weeks in your instance. And that's kind of it. That is your way. You're essentially writing on Fridays, and with that discipline, you can you can finish 3 books every year.
Yeah, it's when you put it like that, it sounds quite weird. But yeah,
I don't know, weird. It sounds bloody phenomenal and impressive. It's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. It shocks me sometimes. Like my wife also says, she said, like you never sit down to write, and you never like have writer's block. Like it just doesn't seem to be a thing for you. Like she said, every time I see you, you basically open the laptop and you are straight in there just writing. And I'm just like, yeah, it's just my kind of. I think I have a really like. I think it's from all the films I watched as a kid and like my love of film that when I'm writing, I visualize. I'm pretty sure everybody does, but like I visualize the whole thing as I'm writing, and when I'm writing, I always kind of like visual storytelling, but I kind of see the whole scene in front of me. It's quite strange when I think about it, but like I kind of imagine that I'm watching my film of the book, and I'm just writing kind of what I'm seeing on the screen. So much
cinematic.
Yeah, so like some like of my writing kind of like a few people that have read my stuff are like, oh, that bit where it does that, it's just like a cut in a film, and like it's just next scene, and it just like comes out of nowhere. Like, and that's kind of how I see it when I'm writing. It's just the film in my head that I'm putting on the paper, which makes it like I can just sit down and be like, oh yeah, I paused it at that point. Like, let's crack on and like. But yeah, like I'm very fortunate. Yeah, I haven't ever suffered from writer's block. Like a lot of that is I do a lot of planning beforehand. So I've got like notebooks that are quite detailed about. So I have like characters, my act structure, scaffolding, kind of like how I want to get to where. Sometimes illustrations of characters and things like that. So that helps kind of keep me centered, and I never ever finish writing mid chapter. I always get to the end of a chapter, like even if I have to write later, or if I'm, it's not 3:00 yet, it's like 2:00. But I'm like, oh, if I write another chapter, I won't write. I'll just hold it. But yeah, and I think that just helps fuel it. But yeah, it's a lot of books in not a lot of time.
So you don't when you do your session, and you will actually stop at the end of a chapter, and you will not start the next chapter until the next session.
Yeah, if I don't have time if I think it's going to be a long chapter,
I got you.
I won't start it until I think like I've got enough time to finish it. But I will. Like, I've written some days I'll sit down and I'll write. My general kind of a good day is around 5,000 to 7,000 words. But I've sat down before and written like 25. I think 22 actually was when I was writing with Josh when we did our little write together.
That's like Stephen Graham Jones level.
Yeah. Like I wrote 22K off the bat, and I was just like, oh wow, like I really needed to get that out. But that was just like one day. I just sat down 9 to 3, and I wrote 22K, and I was like, yeah, cool. But then that's like a rarity. Like I don't write that much often in one day. But yeah, I'd say between 5 and 7 is the sweet spot really. And then if I have time, like if I finish that and I get that done, I'll start my Lansdale on the kind of same day. Like I'll go back to what I've just written and just kind of scan it.
Yeah, I can't end it in a chapter, and then go back to the writing session. Even if I Lansdale it, as we're saying, and and go back and reread and edit and things like that, then I pull up, and I write in Scrivener now, so I pull up another document basically in my folder and get the parameters set for it and all that. And then I stare at the cursor for a fucking hour because I didn't set myself up. And it's just, I guess everybody's a little different, but I have to set myself up. So if I end a chapter, I have to go into the next chapter. I have to write a sentence, a paragraph, something. And so, and strike while the iron's hot. And so it's like, because a lot of times, like, okay, I want this chapter to start right here. So I want to put it into the meat of what they're about to do, or a different decision has happened. So I just find it fascinating that you can end on a chapter and then go right back into it. And it's like, I guess it's just because I've just trained myself to always kind of give myself a hook. That way, when I go back to the next day, I was like, oh, I'm not staring at a blank, a flashing cursor, just, taunting me.
Yeah, the curse of the blank page.
Yes. And it's funny too, you mentioned about having to write a book and like really, really quick because you kind of bit off more than you can chew. And then we talk about Lansdale. Lansdale did that years ago with the screenplay. And this guy was local, and he had written a book or a story or something like, can you do a script? And Lansdale's, well, yeah, I can do a script, It's like, he goes, I can get it to you pretty damn quick. The guy was at his house the next day, hey man, you got that script? And he was like, oh, you need it now. Well, no, give me a little bit. I need a little time. I was like, yeah, you got to be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what, when Ross was talking about it, it brought to mind for me. But, to be honest, ever since hearing that from Lansdale, I do that a little bit myself because I think, if I'm talking to somebody important and there's a potential opportunity, it's like, look, the book might not be written, but if they want the book to have been written and this is going to be the difference between me getting a deal or not,
It's going to
oh,
get
the book is written. Oh, well, can you send it? Give me a week to just polish it up.
it. It's all right.
Let
Yeah,
me
I'm out of
just give
town
it a
for a week.
read through. So, yeah, I mean, goodness, we've got to advocate for ourselves. We've got to create these opportunities. And, I think, like yourself, that's why I don't really have writer's block in the traditional sense. Of course, sometimes there'll be like doubt or there'll be worries, but I just keep writing. And, a lot of it comes back to mutual friend Josh Malaman because he's kind of like, well, so what? What if it kind of fails in your kind of arbitrary definition? It doesn't matter. There's another book. There's one after that. There's one after that. And he'll reframe it rather than it being like, what if it fails? It's like, yeah, but what if it doesn't?
Mm,
And instead of why would it be me? Why wouldn't it be me?
yeah.
Seems to have worked out fairly well for him thus far.
Thus far, yes, he's a very positive man. A lot of people can learn a lot.
And I mean, this isn't the Josh Malaman show, although it can at any point turn into it. But one thing that I find particularly remarkable at the moment is, he had the standout success of Bird Box that just absolutely blew everyone away. Then he got the film deal. And, you normally get one moment like that in your career.
Mm,
But then right now he's having it again with incidents around the house. And, if ever there was proof that you just have to keep going. I mean, it's not like his other books were not a success, but just to have kind of probably that's about 14 books later. There's a lot of books in between Bird Box and Incidents. So, I mean, with me, I think at the moment, The Girl in the Video has been my most popular in terms of sales, but it almost doesn't matter. It's like because the next one that
mm.
might exceed it, and eventually, I'm pretty damn certain that there's going to be a book that's going to do a lot better than The Girl in the Video. So we just keep writing for those moments.
Yeah, I think as well. Like when I was like starting out writing, I can't remember who I spoke to, um, but they because I released Juniper like independently. They were like, I was just like, oh yeah, sales aren't doing that great. Like they soared originally and then they dropped off, and I was just, I don't really know what to do. Like, how do I do this? And I think it was Salt Publishing actually. Like I through my Storgy kind of days, I was like friends with quite a lot of publishers and stuff, and they said, look, don't worry about it, don't sweat it. Like, write more books, release more books, and then you'll see the sales go up because you'll have more for people to read. And I was just like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Like, why didn't I even think of that? Like, I was like, okay, yeah. Not that that's driven me to write loads of books, but I was just like, and then like now, like having like quite a large catalogue of books that are out there, like yeah, they do riff off each other, and you know, some of the books I've written that I love, like Harvesting Nightmare Fields that came out, like I was kind of like, yeah, I love this book. This book's brilliant, but the sales haven't been very good. Like, but then I'm like, but then I look at another book I wrote like last year or the year before, and like that's got loads of sales, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, maybe like it's just that you just have to have the material when people will find it, which is great if you're a prolific, but also encouragement for those that are only have one book or two books that keep writing, and other readers will find them as and when. And yeah, no book is ever dead, as they say. But, well, I don't know if as they say, like someone said that before. But
I mean, I would say it. You've said it here, so between us, they have said it. So there you go.
mm.
And I mean, yeah, I heard people say before, the best marketing is writing the next book,
Mm.
which I think there's some truth to it. I mean, it depends how damn good your marketing campaigns are. But even if you're really good at marketing, well, maybe the second best marketing is writing the next book. And like we have said, like it is widely said, no book is ever dead. We don't know what it is that will make it take off. There might be a film adaptation. There might be that some massive writer or celebrity discovers that book. They put a post out about it on social media, and then suddenly, it's the next big thing. So, yeah, I truly believe that no book is ever dead. And something that I've kind of been saying a lot recently, which it's kind of so bizarre, but also understandable. Like a lot of us falsely, we try to equate our success or the value of our art and our book to the commerce and the sales. And we're tempted to say, if it doesn't sell well, oh, well, that book was a failure. But the ridiculous thing is, when I finish a book, when I've put it out, whether it sells one copy or millions of copies, it's the same fucking book. So it's absurd to say, that the value changes based on the demand. Like, so yeah, all of my books I'm tremendously proud of. Of course, I'd like all of them to sell more, wouldn't we all? But to suggest that it's suddenly better written because a million people now go out and buy it is it's just not true.
I think it's a dangerous game to like fall into. Like if because I love every single book I've released, and I also find it quite difficult sometimes when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite book you've written?" Because they're all my favorites. But I think it can get dangerous when you start comparing because like Only the Stains Remain. I released that. It sold well to start with, but then like I think last year or the year before, it just skyrocketed. I don't know what happened, who said it. It might have been an influencer online, but then that was selling like thousands of copies, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like someone said something, but I don't know. I'm not really on like TikTok or anything anymore. But like I don't know if it was from there or something, but it just like the sales just rocketed, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I should start promoting this book more." And I was selling, and I was like, "No, don't do that because it's like you're cheating on your other books, Ross." I was just like, "Yeah, let's just keep it going." Like, I try and promote all my books the same, and quite a lot of them with indies, so there's a lot of kind of legwork in promoting them. But like, I don't, like you said, like if it sells one copy, I'm a happy man because it's a book I've written and it's sold a copy. But if it sells 1,000 million, yeah, it's good as well. But it's as good as the last book.
Yeah, and I would say that I did ask you what is your favorite book. It's like, well, I'm being called out here, but I mean, for me, like I do have like one that I would say is my personal favorite of the ones that I've written. So I think we're allowed to have favorites. There are things that I like about all of them. So yeah, I wasn't meaning to put you on the spot in a kind of like choose your favorite child because we've seen how those films play out.
Yeah.
It gets pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not like I'm offended by it, but it's just like I really struggle because, and also like some days I like another book different than when you've asked me. Like I'll be like, oh yeah, I really like that book, and then like 2 days later I'm like, oh yeah, but that book. Yeah, it's just it's crazy, isn't it? Like,
And so I want to kind of talk a little bit about the planning and the editing because we've glossed over those elements a little bit. So, first of all, I mean, you were telling us you plan quite a lot beforehand. So, people who, again, they've been doing the maths in terms of this 3 books per year, it's like, well, how much of a plan do you have? And then, well, how long does that take? Is that one Friday to plan an entire book, or do you allow yourself to plan not on Fridays because it's right. I guess it's writing tangential. Are you doing that between kind of social work? If you got a lunch break, you plan an idea down. Try not to confuse like the caseworker notes with your story plan. It's like whoa,
Yeah.
no, give that one back. That's not what you
Um,
want to read.
I think so. The planning wise, so basically, I won't start writing a book until I know the complete story for the book I'm going to write. Um, Sometimes it's quite, because my head is a very busy place. So normally when I'm writing a book, I'll have like 3 books in my head that aren't written, that are just kind of like floating around, each fighting each other and just having a little war. And then one will eventually kind of like just keep on coming into my thinking and during the day or something like that. So then that will be the book that I will then start thinking about planning. Whilst I'm writing a book, I may, like towards the end of the book, I may start planning the next book. Just in my downtime, like I use my phone quite a lot for notes, and then because normally it comes to me either when I'm on my way to work or when I just get up in the morning. I'm like, oh yeah, that unlocks that bit. Okay, that's great. And then I put all my notes in my phone. I think like with the last 3 books, I've had notes on my phone that basically would go from the beginning of the book to the end, and then because I don't know why I do it because it's on my phone, but I'll write it all up in my little notebook, so it's all written down. And that kind of planning side normally takes around about, could be anywhere, like I Died Too, but they haven't buried me yet. Like I literally wrote that plan outline for that book in like 2 weeks, and that was just through notes on my phone and then having the 2 Fridays. Other books might take a bit longer. So Cradle of Glass that I just finished writing, that I planned that one for quite a while. It was a book I was writing, the story I love so much. I was like, I'm going to write this one to submit it to an agent. So I was like, I need to spend a bit more time in the planning of it. So that took, I'd say probably about 3 months to plan that one. But generally, it's quite quick. Like what I tend to do, so I use kind of like a 5-act structure mostly. I change that quite a bit, and then what I do is I say, I've got a 5-act structure. The first act I want to have 4 chapters. So then each other act will have 4 chapters. So then I know how many chapters are in the whole book. I'll then jot down chapter 1, and then I will put down kind of like, normally my notes say something like killer first line, and then I'll be like killer first line, and then like I want to get to, and then I'll put down the kind of like end bit of the chapter, and then I'll make up the rest when I actually write. And then like chapter 2, and I'll go all the way up, and I'll have like inciting incident, turning the screw, like conclusion or whatever, and I'll just work my way through it and jot down every single chapter how I'm going to get there. And then I'll spend a few hours working on characters, names, ages, what they look like, how old, like what they do for jobs. Like I go really deep dive, like what their hobbies are and all that. Even if it doesn't come up, I've got it written down. And then sometimes I might pull some images off the internet just to kind of like landscapes or things, or like things I'm not quite sure about. I did a lot of that with the Western because it's set in Nebraska, so like that is the book that I spent the most time researching. I must have researched for about 6 months. I joined the Nebraskan Historical Society because it's set in Nebraska. Like they sent me like maps of the time that I was writing in. They sent me town layouts for all the towns that I kind of like picked that they were going to go on this journey to. They sent me like the maps. Like I didn't even know they existed at that point, but it was like every single building in the town was written down, like which ones were water, like how all these. So I had all of that. So like it was crazy the amount of research that went on in that one. But I wanted it was my kind of like this is the book, Ross, like the book. And yeah, so I spent about 6 months planning that one. But yeah, that's kind of it, really. Like, I tried to research a bit, and more so on books that I do in America, or American, like, kind of language and things like that, because I want to make sure it's right and not me just guessing, like, animals that are in a certain place in America. I don't know. But I try to do, like, when I'm writing in America, I try to do a lot more research just so I get it right. The one set in, like, England, I'm just like, yeah, I know that. Like, I try to write from places that I know as well. So when I'm writing them, I'm kind of like, I've been there. I know what that landscape's like. It's like this.
So, in terms of the initial planning stage, I mean, you were talking about your writing into notebooks, and I believe that you actually have the notebooks with you right now. So, let's
Who
take
told
a
you that?
look. Yeah.
Yeah, so I use kind of like moleskin, they're quite thin. And a little kind of like thing I got going when I started this is I get my wife to, because she's got very nice handwriting, so I get her to write the title page of each book in here, and then I carry on afterwards. So the Devil's Pocketbook was originally called Hostage, but we changed that. I can't remember why, but we changed it. But I'm going to talk about I Died Too, but They Haven't Buried Me Yet, which is here because it's quite cool. So I have, so it's all kind of written out. So this is the first kind of bit I start afterwards is characters. So then I work through my character list of all the characters that are going to turn up. So that has their ages, kind of how old they are, when, if they're a friend, all this kind of stuff. And because I Died Too, but Haven't Buried Me Yet deals a little bit with possession, I went off on a little kind of like just planning thing. So on this side here, I've got seance written in the middle, and then I went around and kind of thought about the possession elements and tropes that happen. So like I've just did like a bullet list of everything, kind of like speaking in another language, lies, deception, salt acting as a kind of way to confine spirits, like lots of other kind of things, like changing a person's character, foul breath, all this kind of stuff. And then I've got down the bottom here is just kind of like some words or sentences that I thought would work quite well, which just came to me. So I just jot them down so I don't forget them. Research that I did. So I read a lot of possession books before writing my possession book. So I've got down here Exorcist Road by Jonathan Janz, which is amazing, and it needs to be re-released. Exorcist Falls, The Exorcist, Legion, The Body Will Follow, Coffin Shadows, Incarnate, Come Closer, Goddess of Filth, The Things We Cannot Say, Amityville Horror, The Outsider, My Best Friend's Exorcism, Last Days of Jack Sparks, Boys in the Valley, and then kind of like just like films that I'd watched that were possession based. And then we get onto the 5-act structure. So then I kind of work out how many chapters are going to be in each act, and then I just kind of like work my way through it. And they're quite short. So obviously this first chapter here, I just write the big kind of like, because if I'm just copying all my notes out of the notebook, it loses the part of the creativity part of it, because I'm just transcribing what I've already written. So what I tend to do is just write. So chapter 1 for I Died Too, but Haven't Buried Me Yet, all I've written in my notebook is opening scene, establish environment and main protagonist Henry, and then it just says that he packs up to heads off to Josh's past and troubles, and then that's all that's there. So I write the beginning bit and the ending of the chapter, and then I have the fun part of creating in the middle. So I know where I start, I know where I need to get to, and then I just make up that middle bit, which is the joy of writing. And then so I just basically work all the way through. The red bits are kind of like, once I've written it, if as I'm writing I'll be like, oh, actually let me put something else in that chapter, and then I'll just add little red notes just so I don't forget. And then I just work my way through it. Some of them I sometimes include, I don't know if I've got any in here, might be in this one. But I sometimes will have cutouts and things that I want to add. I tend to do little doodles in there, just images that come to mind that I think are quite iconic. I have got something in there. Where is it? So Devil's Pocketbook, because it's set in a real place that I went to, Paul Perro. So I've cut out kind of things of the town, certain elements. So this is the Chapel Pool that's in it, just so I can kind of get the geography right. And it's always there, so I can quickly turn to the page and find out kind of if I think they've turned left down a road and they haven't, and end up somewhere else. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. And sometimes I get a bit carried away. So with my Western, I started off writing short chapters, but then they gradually got, because I was so excited about this book, they gradually got longer. So I ended up writing more of the book and ended up transcribing it. I don't know whether that was because of this one. I was typing on a typewriter. So I was like, if I write a bit more, I can carry on writing. But yeah, that's the kind of process that I work with. And, I'm happy to kind of share images of those with you guys if you want to use them on your Patreon or whatever. Just I can show you a book from start to finish in the planning stages. And then people can kind of see the technique I use, but it might help. But yeah, that's kind of the Ross Jeffery school of writing a book.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that our patrons will be interested to see one of these from start to finish. But one of the things that I noticed immediately is just how ordered and neat it is, considering that you're doing this, by hand. I mean, when I'm planning, as Bob knows, because we wrote a book together, I'm pretty meticulous with the planning stage, but there's bits that I delete, I add in, I like the plan. I can't just sit down and seamlessly write it in the way that you have, because I find that there's almost discovery within the plan. So there'd be so many colors on on kind of my way of doing it. So it makes me believe that probably there's an awful lot of kind of sitting down and thinking before you're committing ink to paper.
Yeah, kind of but sometimes when that plan is down, there'll be sometimes when I'm writing and I may combine. So even though it's down in the chapters, I may combine two chapters into one when I'm writing, because I'll be like, oh, actually, that works better if it just flows into the same chapter. And then I'll possibly come up with if I'm locked in on having 5 chapters per act. Sometimes I'll change, but if I'm because I like the kind of steady progress and 5, 5, 5. So I may come up with another chapter to add in. Or I may not, but normally I tend to try and keep, if I'm doing the act structure as I want it, I try and keep the number the same just for the pacing. But yeah, and then sometimes I'll completely delete a chapter that I'm like, oh, actually that doesn't work, so I will just write a new chapter and just replace it. But I don't change my notebook. I'll just put a cross through that chapter, and then I'll just write a fresh one. But yeah, it's interesting. It's great. I love doing it, and then also so I'll write it or do all that, and then just working with my editor, there'll be some additional kind of stuff that comes out of that as well. So I will. So I'm fortunate enough that I've worked with quite a few great editors, but I currently work with his social tag is Austrian Spencer, but he's Andy Spencer. He is absolutely phenomenal. The I think it's 3 books we've worked on. It's true what they say. If you want to be a great writer, get yourself a great editor. And he has taught me so much. He's taught me more in the last kind of 3 books that we've worked on together than my entire schooling in English. Like just how to use punctuation correctly, like just things that I should know that I don't. And like he goes on deep dives with his editing, and like there's bits where I've written something and he's gone. I think with the Western in particular, I'd written something like the horse was walking along and it went for a piss as it was walking, and he was like, "I've looked into this, and horses can't piss whilst they're walking. They can only defecate." And I was like, "Oh, didn't know that." He was like, "So you might want to change that because that's not going to work." And I was like, "Okay." Like he is proper deep in his editing, and it just brings out the novel in what it should be and like how I want it to become. But also there's bits where he's just like, "That's not going to work." And I'm like, "Okay." But then like, you know, he'll give me a flourish of something that he kind of thinks as he's reading it, like that will work in this section. And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, that's great." And it's that kind of like compromise that I didn't have before, because like the first few books I just wrote and edited them myself, or I got someone to do it for me who was like a friend. And but I think writing and like with these notebooks, that's my kind of first kind of, this is how it's going to be, and then it moves on from that to the editor, and then the editor comes back, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll change that. But he's brilliant. Like, I absolutely, like, if I could work with him as an editor forever, I would. Like, he's great, like, and that's something to be cherished, because there are great editors out there, and you know, it takes time to find one. I worked with an editor once who said that I think they said something along the lines of, "I will edit it for you for free, but I'd want 10% of your royalties from the book." And I was like, that's not going to happen. But there's people out there that would fall for that, so don't fall for that. And yeah, it's just a strange business, and you know, I'm only fresh in it. I'm not like long in the tooth about it, but like I've worked with some great ones, and Andy's brilliant. And yeah, it's just part of the process. And for someone that didn't get English at school, like I've learned so much. And then each book is different, because at each book I've worked with him, I've got better, and I can see that I've got better because of his editing. So there's less red pen on his returns, which is good.
Yeah, what you're saying about editors asking for royalties, no, that is not how it's done. You
No.
know, I offer freelance editing, I have a per word rate. That's it. There's no, "Oh, I'll do it for free if you give me 10% of the royalties." Well, I don't know what to tell you, but that's definitely not free. That is, you know, depending on the sales, potentially you are going to be way overpaying for what the per word rate would be. So, yeah, absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, in terms of Austrian Spencer editing your work, is that just for the things that you're putting out independently, or are you sending him things even before you send it to publishers and your agent? Like, what are the stages again? What are the pieces here? Because that, you know, sometimes you're putting stuff out indies, sometimes you're with other presses. Now, you know, relatively recently, you've got an agent. So you finish the book after doing the Lansdale method. Do you show it to somebody immediately? Do you give it another pass? What's going on?
Yeah, sorry, my writing's quite complicated, isn't it? So I basically from now on, what I do is I'll write a book, I'll Lansdale it, and then doesn't matter what's going to happen to the book in the future, I will use Andy to make it the best book it's going to be. And I will send it to him, he'll edit it, and then once I get that back and the manuscript is crisp, I will then decide like what am I going to do with that. So he edited Harvesting the Nightmare Fields for me, before I submitted it to Cemetery Gates Media and then sent it to them. And then they were like, yep, we'll take it. He edited, I keep wanting to say The Glass Womb, but it's now changed to Cradle of Glass. Yes, I have got an agent now. And that was a big kind of like step for me. Like I was kind of like wanting to do it on my own, and I was like, I've reached the kind of limit of what I can do. So I had this idea, Cradle of Glass, which is one of my favorite books. And I was just like, I want this to be the best it can be. So I sent it to Andy. Andy edited it, sent it back to me, and it was like I was really happy with it. And I was like, okay, this is the one. This is the one, Ross, that I'm going to send to an agent. And I wanted it to be the best it could be, because you only get that first opportunity to kind of really sell yourself. And I was just like, it needs to be the best. So worked on it. He sent it back to me. I'd then do some revisions of what he'd said. I'd send it back to him again. He'd double check what I'd inputted and made sure it all was great, and then sent it back to me. And then, submitted that to Elizabeth Copps of Copps Literary Agency. And then she got back to me pretty quickly and was just like, yeah, I'd like to represent you. We had a lovely conversation. And then from that, she then kind of came back to me and was like, I've got a few notes on the book. And then basically she gave me the notes. I then shared those notes with Andy because he was part of the process. And then I was just like, right, I'm going to start working on them, and then I'm going to send it back to you to check, and then we'll send it back to. So that's kind of how it works. That's all cost on me. Like, these publishers that I'm approaching now, have their own in-house editors or whoever, but like they will obviously make changes themselves. But I want to put, because also, look, I keep talking about my childhood, or lack of education, but I was just like, I want it to be as best it's going to be before somebody else reads it, because I don't want them to think that I'm stupid. And that's why I use them, and I will continue to do so at my own cost, even though I know it's going to get edited again. I'd rather it be in that position. And also, like, some of the stuff like that comes out of that editing process makes the manuscript even stronger than I thought it was going to be. So there's some times where Andy's gone, I don't think this whole chapter works, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, you could do this or you could do that, like have a go and then send it back to me, and then I'll do that, and then would work. And then sometimes I'd write a chapter and it'd be like, actually, no, it does work. Let's go back to the other one. And then it's that kind of relationship. It's also not thinking you're better than, like, what you've written is going to be the best thing, because somebody else can just add one little line of dialogue or change something that's going to completely make you think, oh, actually, yeah, shit, why didn't I think of that? Like, that's a great idea. And it's just, not being too precious on it. There are some times where I'm like, he'll recommend a change and I'll be like, no, like that line is staying because I wrote it, and I love it, so it's going to stay. It's just picking your battles of what's good for the manuscript, but what's also kind of getting rid of your voice in the piece.
Yeah. Me and Michael went through that with their watching, like, multiple times. I was steadfast on certain things that weren't going to happen. And then, Michael was, he was bound and determined, and we flip flopped on a couple of things. And then, I don't know. It's like when we have these revelations, and it'd be like reading the email back going, that's exactly what I said last week. I'm so glad you came aboard. It's like, wow, now I see the light, and it's like, yeah. But that's there's some things it's like I was like, no, we're not, that's not gonna happen, and you have to put your foot down. So yeah, I get that. I feel that. I feel that for you.
And I mean, a lot of what we're talking about, it links into this question that we've got from Traci via Patreon, who wants to know, you've both been independently and traditionally published in the sense of being with another press. So why do you choose to go each path? And kind of going forward, what do you see the kind of route that you'll be taking, or what would make you think, okay, this is the book for a trad publisher, this is a book to independently put out?
I think what I love about indie publishing is quite a lot of the time the swiftness of it. And as I was kind of releasing my first books and things like that, like being able to kind of and self-publish and indie publish, I was just like the fact I could just finish a book and push a button and it was out, like was well, it blew my mind because I didn't know it existed. But I was just like, yeah, this is great. Like I can write a book and do that, and it's out in the world. And I I do love indie publishing. There are I've had some burns with some publishers and stuff like that, but like I just love the process, and I love how kind of gritty and kind of pulpy it is, and like it just like some of the best horror books I've read have been independently published. So it's not something I want to give up. I think it's just like weighing the subject matter, the scope of the book, and I think as well, like for me personally, I think I can feel like in my gut like what is an indie book and what is a book I want to hold on to, and kind of be like, actually, that's a book I could get a bigger readership with. And when I signed with Elizabeth, we kind of discussed kind of how it works. Like, because I agents just, I've got a film and TV agent and I've got a literary agent, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And I don't know.
Are they connected?
As in,
like the film and TV plus the literary agent, are they all under the same umbrella, or are they separate?
No, so I've got Alec Frankel, who works for IAG, International Artist Group. That was something that was set up through. Well, I had the connection when I was with Darklit Press, who we won't talk about because they stole a lot of royalties from a lot of authors and then disappeared. But that was kind of the only kind of positive that has come out of that. Like, he made contact with me because he read my book from there and was like, yeah, I'd like to represent you. We had a lovely conversation, and that's great. And then obviously my literary agents from Elizabeth Copps from Copps Literary Agency. But they've already started working together, like discussing things behind the scenes, like with my stuff that's going on. I forgot where I was going. I completely forgot.
So I derailed you because I asked if they were kind of separate.
Oh, that was it. So yeah, when I was talking to Elizabeth, when we were having a conversation about what literary agents do, because I had no idea. I was just like, how does this work? Like, what do we do? Because it was out of the blue. Like I sent that manuscript thinking, oh yeah, that's the good manuscript, and then she came back and I was like, oh crap, like what do I do now? And then we just had the conversation, like, because I'd done my research on her. Like, she was the only person I sent that manuscript to because she was the only person I wanted to work with. Because I'd done some research, I'd spoken to Tyler Jones and Philip Fracassi, that like she represents them, and then I looked at her back catalogue and she represents Gwendolyn Kist as well, and like other people, and I was just like, okay, she seems like she's got a finger on the pulse. And then yeah, like had the meeting. She was absolutely lovely, brilliant. She's got a great kind of scope for what she wants for me and the books, and we just had the discussion of like, I was like, do you want like everything I write? Do you want to like see it before I do anything with it? And she was like, well, it depends. Like, I can either just work for you on your novels, or I could work with you on your novels and novellas, or if you've got short stories, I could do that as well. She said, but also if you wanted to just write a book and send it to an indie, she said you could do that as well. But always use me as a soundboard. And she's been brilliant. Like one of the reasons I wanted to get an agent was to hopefully free up all that time of, trying, like, sending off manuscripts to kind of all that kind of legwork. And I was just like, oh, that'd be really cool. Like, because then I can just focus on writing the books, which is what I want to do. And yeah, she's been great. Like, there's 2 books out currently out for submission. And she's able to reach places that I would never be able to. So she's focusing on big 5, and then working her way down from them as we go, or if we hear back kind of passes. I'm not going to say rejections, passes. And yeah, so that's kind of like, she's just dealing with all of that, and then just keeps me updated, and that's great. But I think, like, because I love like Philip Fracassi and like Josh Malerman, like, they seem to have a really great balance of like indie trad, like, kind of like how they're working, and like, I quite like that. I like the not being tied down to a particular publisher, and just being able to, and like, I've got a few books out with Thunderstorm, like, being able to do that. I love working with Thunderstorm books, and thankfully they like working with me. So it's quite nice just to be able to do that. And that's, I work a job. I'm not making mega bucks, like, but like, getting one of my books as a Thunderstorm books gives me like money in the bank. And that's, I don't do it for the money, but it always helps. And Thunderstorm books are beautiful books. But yeah, like, I'll continue to do that, I think. Just working with indies. I love working with Cemetery Gates Media. It's just so straightforward. Royalties arrive on time. Like, you just, yeah, they're just so easy to work with. Yeah, it's just trying to find relationships that work. And like, I'd love to be published by Bad Hand Books at some point. Like, I love what they're doing. Shortwave Publishing, I love what they're doing. So yeah, I love being a kid that didn't love books. I love books now. I bloody love them. So I want to work with everyone. We'll just see how it goes.
And so, I mean, what does the marketing aspect look like? What do you do once you've got a book coming out? How much do you do? How much does the publisher do? Obviously, that's going to vary a little bit depending on the press, but I mean, you're certainly prolific in your writing, but as you say, in terms of the response, you've had some books like Only the Stains Remain, where it seems to be absolutely everywhere. And then you said there's been others like Harvesting the Nightmare Fields, where for whatever reason it hasn't quite got that traction.
Yeah, I think so. The kind of advertising, kind of publicity side of stuff, like, it gets me down a little bit, because obviously I don't know, obviously, with a bigger publisher, kind of like how that works, because I've not had one yet. But kind of, I think, like, the only kind of, like, well, I think a lot of it is down to you with indie and indie publishing. Like, yes, all the publishers I've worked with, they do the ad campaign comes out when it, like, if you're lucky, you get a publisher marketplace announcement, you can use that. And then it's just, but like, I think quite a lot of creating the content and keeping the content going falls on the author. I made I don't know whether it could be related, but I made a conscious effort last year to come off of certain social medias, because I had Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, some other thing, I can't remember what it was. But like I had like 6, like YouTube, like all these kind of things, and I was getting burnt out by just updating each one. And I know there's probably a app or something that you can just upload once and it uploads to everything. But I'm old, I don't understand these things. And like, I was just like, no, like that is not sustainable. So I came off of Facebook, came off of TikTok. I think the only things I'm on now are Instagram and Blue Sky. Like, that's only places where you can find me. Mainly because I didn't like what I was seeing. So on like loads of my social medias, it just got, for some reason, I don't know what it was, but for some reason it just got influxed with violence, loads of like derogatory kind of like stuff like everywhere, and like the sheer amount of people that I was following, like I just never saw anything that interested me. So much so that I then reduced my amount of followers on like every single Instagram and Blue Sky. Like, I reduced the amount of people I follow because I was just like, if people want to follow me, that's great. Like, I appreciate it, I love it, but I can't follow everybody and still use those as a platform that I need, because it just gets bogged down. I want to see the things that I want to see, not everything else. And I think maybe that might have affected like sales, probably. Like on Twitter, I had quite a high follower count, so I'd like release something and then but I'd rather have less sales than be crippled by keeping up with social media and social trends and all that bollocks. But I think, yeah, but then like, so for me, like I'll create like assets. So like if I get quotes of praise and stuff, I'll make a little nice image, share that, do that. I think quite a lot of indie publishers, you like release a lot of books just to stay relevant. So once they release one, the next one's already kind of in the pipeline. So you get like, I don't know, say 2 months worth of kind of like, yes, a couple of posts, and then it's just on with the next book. And then unless you're keeping it updated, it just falls in the background. And then, yeah, the last 6 months I've been like, yeah, made homeless, kicked out of our house that we were living in. And then I didn't do anything for 6 months. And I think that was when Harvesting was released and like Metamorphosis was released. So it was kind of like this, I didn't do anything because I wasn't in the headspace. I wasn't even writing at that point. Like, I was just like trying to survive. So that also could probably lead to the downward sales. But I'm hoping, if a book gets with a big publisher, that there's a big ad campaign, marketing campaign. Like, I could go on, do talk shows and all that kind of stuff. Talk shows, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. But Oprah, if you're listening, I'll come on there and have a little chat. But yeah.
She is a regular listener to this horror podcast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, goodness. I mean, in terms of being made homeless, is that something you want to talk about? I mean, I know that you've mentioned it publicly. So, what were the circumstances leading up to that? And how on earth did you get through it? I mean, life gives us these tests at times, and my God, was that something?
Yeah, so it's quite ironic, really, that I work for a homelessness charity and I was made homeless. But yeah, so it was kind of, November last year. No, it was before then. No, it was November. Our landlord, because we were like every year, because we rented, and every year our landlord would put our rent up. So we were like, okay, that's fine. Like normally in January. So we were like, and it's normally about £100. So it's not too much. And so we were like, okay, that's fine. And we were gearing ourselves up for, it's November. He's probably going to put our rent up in a minute. Let's see what comes through. And we got a letter in November. No, I had an email. I was at work, and I had an email. No, sorry, I'm getting confused. I had a phone call, and it was our letting agent. And I was just like, that's weird. Why are they calling me? So I picked the phone up, and I was at my desktop on my computer. And I picked my phone up, and I was like, hello? And they were like, oh, hello, Mr. Jeffery. Yeah, I'm just calling you because I've sent you an email. And because I had my screen open, I was just like, oh, yeah, I've just got it. Yeah, hang on. And she was like, oh, I just wanted to say, and I'd already read the email. And our landlord had decided to put our rent up by £1,000 a month. So we were already paying £1,500 a month for our house, and he wanted £2,500 a month, which is more than I get paid. And that's not including bills or anything, or council tax, all this other kind of stuff. And I was just like, what the fuck? And I immediately burst out crying, because I was just like, how on earth am I going to provide for my family? Like, I was like, I've got 2 young children. And at that point, my wife was not very well. So I was just like, and my wife's not well. Like, how do I survive this? And then I was basically sobbing in my office on the phone. I still had them on the phone. And I was just sobbing, and they were just like, oh, we're really sorry, but we don't have a say in it. The landlord has decided, so we've got to like follow through. And I was just like, I can't pay it. I was like, I physically can't pay that money because I don't earn that much money a month. And they were like, oh, we're really sorry, but that's what he wants. So I was like, okay, well, I need to go, because I said, have you sent this to my wife? And they were like, yes. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to go, because I need to make sure she's all right, because she's going to pick this up and she's at home alone, and I need to make. So then I immediately left work, and then like got home, and my wife wasn't there, and I was just like, oh shit, like where is she? Like, has she read it and gone out somewhere? And then like she came back in the car, and she was like, what are you doing home? And I was like, have you seen an email? She was like, no. And then I was able to break it to her. So we were both bawling our eyes out, like didn't know what to do. So drove down to the office, spoke to them, and said, like, what? Like, we can't pay this. What's to do? And they were like, they were being really friendly, like, oh, yeah, it's really bad. Like, he's not listening to us. And so we thought they were on our side and they were going to be helpful. But then a couple of weeks later, like, they said, I'll make him an offer and then see how that goes. And then when we got home, I was just like, but I don't want to make him an offer, because we're paying more than enough already. And I don't want to, like, what do we say? Like £100 more? Or do we go like, and then it was just like, we were just like, I don't know what to do. So we went back and just said, we're willing to pay the amount that we're paying, and we will look for somewhere else to rent in the meantime. So we'll pay that, and we'll pay what we're currently paying, and we'll try and get out as soon as we can. If he can agree to that we'll try and get out. And then about 3 weeks later, we got a eviction notice to basically say, you've got 2 months to move out of the house, or you'll get kicked out and we'll get bailiffs to remove you. And then that ruined our Christmas. And then, like, basically my kids opened their presents on Christmas Day and then packed them all up into a cardboard box and didn't open them until we moved into this house that we're in now. Because I'm not homeless anymore, I'm in the house. And then my wife was just like, well, we didn't know what to do. And like we're both like in our 40s, and we've rented pretty much since we left university. So we have no savings, because basically we used all the money that we made to live. And we lived in London, and then we moved to Bristol, and it's just really expensive to rent in this country. So we thought getting a mortgage was past us. And then my wife was like, look, why don't we just try one more time, speak to a mortgage advisor and see if we can get a mortgage. So we're like, okay, let's do that. And then spoke to a mortgage advisor, and he was like, look, there is one kind of mortgage provider that would give it to you based on your kind of so many years of great renting. This is how much you're able to get. So we're like, okay, that's great. And all this time, like, the deadline is looming of when we have to move out. And I was just like, okay, right, let's try and find somewhere. And the amount that we could borrow, because of my being in my 40s, the length of the mortgage is much less. So I was just like, right, okay. So like, this is how much we can lend you. And we could not find any, like, we could find a crack house in Bristol to live in, with no toilet and like graffiti on the walls, and it was in like a really shit area. And I was just like, no.
I mean, you like Chuck Palahniuk, so that seems apropos with Fight Club.
Exactly.
to interject a serious situation with a ridiculous comment.
I love it. But that's kind of like, if you think of Fight Club, where their house was, that was the kind of place we could buy in Bristol. And then so we then like looked further afield, and so we looked at Newport in Wales, which is about 45 minutes from Bristol, and like just basically started looking, found an amazing house that was within our budget, and then we looked at a couple of like dodgy places. Like, there was one place we went into, I swear the person died in their bedroom. Like there was like sheets on the bed with like a body stain in them. It was just like, no. Yes, we found a really nice house, put an offer in, it was accepted. So we were like, oh great, that's brilliant. But then we were kind of like at the end of the time we were allowed. As someone that works for homelessness, I was just like, well, we could just stay where we are, because that's what I would tell my guests that we have in. Like if they've been evicted, I was like, don't leave the property. I said, stay there as long as you can, and then you can then like, you know, speak to the council to get you moved and all this kind of stuff. But that is kind of classified as squatting. And then I was just like, I don't know if we can do that if we're going for a mortgage, because that might show up on something down the line, and it would like mean that we couldn't get a mortgage. So then, like, enter stage right. My wife's got a friend, and she was just like, look, I spoke to my dad. He lives in Bristol, and like I told them that you need some help. And he said, like, he was recently widowed, and he said that you can come and stay with him for as long as you need whilst this gets set up. And that was like if it wasn't for him, we would literally have been moving around every week to different hotels, like being like presenting as homeless. So he was like, look, come and live with me for as long as you want. Like, so all four of us just rocked up to his house. We had to put everything into storage. So everything we owned went into storage. And like, we just took like 4 suitcases with us, like, and that was all we had. And then literally stayed there for, I think it was about 5 months. And it was amazing that this guy who didn't owe us any favor was just like, look, I want to help you guys. And like, he wouldn't take any money from us. I was like, look, we'll pay you rent. He was like, no, you'll need that for when you move in. I don't want anything. And I was like, okay, well, we'll pay utility bills. And he was like, no, I don't want anything. He was like, you keep all the money you need because you'll need it later on. I was like, wow. Like, I was just like, okay. He's like, the only thing if you want to, he said, the only thing that I would take as payment is if you just like cook me a meal in the evening. And we were just like, well, we're cooking for 4. What's like 5? Like, we were like, yeah, that's fine. And yeah, so we did that. But like for that whole time, like since November to like May, I was not in the headspace to do any writing. Like, well, I'd been writing a book all the way up to then, and I was about 65K into it. And then just as soon as I got that news, I was just like, my priorities switched completely. I was just like, yeah, like, writing is done. We need to survive this. And it was been challenging. Like, you know, it's been really difficult. But from the kindness of people, it showed me that, like, you know, no matter what is going on, you can get used to it. Like, even if it's really difficult and strange and weird, and, you know, sleeping in a room you've never slept in before, and, you know, just wondering what's going to happen. Like, things happen and things move on, and you change and adapt. And it's weird because I didn't do anything creative in that time, but in that time I've probably got 5 novels in my head from that time of just that kind of fallow period of not doing anything. Like, it was, I think, my brain's way of kind of coping, because I missed writing and I loved it, and I'd love it, and like, I missed having my books around me, and I missed having my like records, and like everything that I'd kind of discovered that I loved was just stripped away, and I couldn't focus on anything. It was just like, I need to make sure my wife is okay. I need to make sure my children, because like my youngest daughter, because we lived in that home that the landlord was a bastard. So we lived in that home for 7 years, and it's the only home my youngest daughter knew. And for it to be living in that home for 7 years, and then like one night we just go, yeah, we have to move out because the landlord's kicking us out. Like it was like all the roots that she had in that place were just like stripped, and it was just like it's taken them months to kind of like get over the trauma of having to leave that home. But the fact now that we own our own property and that it can't be taken away, and that we can like paint a wall without having to ask if we can paint a wall, or like just like having my office set up with my books and my posters and all that kind of stuff, like it's just amazing. But it has been one hell of a ride. I've been tired for like, which feels like years, but also now like, and it's making like those sacrifices as well that you don't realize you're going to have to make. Like, so my daughters are going into years 6 and 11, so that's like last year of primary school, last year of secondary school, so GCSE year, and we're deciding to keep them in school in Bristol, so doing the commute in the morning, get them to Bristol, and then commuting back every evening, just because we want it to be as safe for them as possible when everything else is changing. But like for me, like I have to get up at like, well, Michael, because sometimes we converse in the early hours of the morning. But like I'm getting up at like 4:20 in the morning to get to work, and then like to make the travel and do everything, and then like I get home at like 6 in the evening, and then go to bed at 10, and then back up at 4. Like it's just, and then I still get my Fridays, so I still do my writing on a Friday, but like it's just that sacrifice we have to make it work, and I wouldn't change it. And like we've only been here like since May, but like I'd never go back. Like it's wonderful. Yeah.
God, I hate so much that this happened to you, that this is even allowed to
Mm.
happen. And I mean, I know that the UK, particularly the property market, particularly the rental market, is in absolute shambles. I've heard of things like this happen before, but like it feels like, how can that be legal? If I hear my rent's going up, what, I expect 50 quid maybe, you
Yeah.
know, maybe in London £100, but 1,000 in dollars, that's $1,400. And then, looking at it as a percentage, I've seen other writers go through things like this as well. But how can you do that? And also, how can a landlord one day just decide, oh, I need
Mm.
this amount more? That it has to be greed.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way
Oh
that their
yeah.
costs went up so much, and to have not even accepted your offer of, look, let us pay this rent that we've been paying for 7 years, and we will do our best to move out as soon as we can. Like, what?
Because we even said
You
to,
know,
we even went back to him and we're like, I think this was in like, so he gave us 2 months notice or whatever. And then, so I was just like, so we found a house really quickly. And then, so we went back to him, like, I think within a month, and just said, look, we found a place. We are moving out. We'll carry on paying the same amount of rent, and we'll just, like, we will be leaving. Like, we will be leaving, but could you just give us that bit of time? And I think it was on like the 23rd of December, so just before Christmas. He then messaged back and was like, no, I want you out by the time I've said. And I was just like, what a bastard. Like, you just. But anyway, yeah.
and
I wish
when you
him the
can,
best.
you're a kinder man than I am, Ross. But
Mhm.
yeah, you
Best
contrast
friends.
that with this other gentleman who just allowed you into his home, wouldn't accept anything. You've literally seen in the space of a month the best and the worst of humanity.
Yeah,
Greed and
Yeah.
and absolute selflessness. And I mean, I've publicly spoke about having gone through quite a lot these past few years with a divorce, a custody battle, not seeing my at the time 3-year-old daughter for nearly 2 years. And I mean, at any time I have a struggle, I kind of turn to like a version of Jonathan Janz's "It's Good Because." Now, I
yeah,
wouldn't go as far as to say, not seeing my daughter for 2 years was good, but what I'm doing is I'm looking for like how can I find some light in this situation? But I guess more than that, I kind of trust that if I put kindness into the world, then eventually it will pay me back in kind. And so anytime something bad happens, I say, okay, I'm going through a rough period now, but we're going to see later how this kind of manifested into being a good thing overall for my life. And for people such as yourself, you would perhaps talk about it being like God's plan. I know that you're a Christian, and you've at least twice used in your fiction, the Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still. I think you might have said you've got a tattoo of that, in fact. And we're getting visual confirmation for the video.
I am branded.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's it's so rough being in those moments, but I'm happy that what's come out of this is you finding a home, you being on the property ladder.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rent prices in the UK, they're one of the reasons why, I'm in Japan, and I've
Mm.
decided to be here permanently, or as permanently as anyone can say they're anywhere. Because, I can rent somewhere at an affordable price and not fear for my death because of the area that I'm now living in. So, ah, but yeah, good job on getting somewhere in Wales. And you were saying it's so much more affordable there. I mean, what as a percentage are we looking at to kind of highlight the, I suppose, the Welsh versus the English property market?
So when we looked in Bristol, you couldn't find anything. Well, basically, let me break it down. So we were paying £1,500 rent, which he wanted 2,500. I think we might have been paying under market anyway. So I'd say, like, say we're paying 1,700 rent for our mortgage here. So we literally can get to own our house. We're paying 1,000. So it's like, so we're already quids in just by paying a mortgage, which is crazy because I think quite a lot of rentals is like double or triple what you'd be paying in a mortgage if you could get a mortgage. So yeah, it's mad. And like, yeah, like I said, like we've moved into like a Victorian terrace house here, and we couldn't even afford like a crack house in Bristol. It's just, and like it's beautifully laid out. It's lovely. Like we haven't had to do anything to the property. Um, and yeah, it's just different, and like people are nice and friendly, which is something I've not really found. Like people say hello, and like someone dropped apples at our door from their garden the other day. I've never even spoken to them, but they were just like, "Oh, there's some apples from our garden." I was like, "Bloody hell!" But but yeah, lovely.
Yeah, you don't get that in London. It's like, where's the free Apple service?
No, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the same in a lot of countries, that the more rural areas, there's like a bit more bounce and friendliness to them. I mean, like I lived near Tokyo before, but now I'm in a more rural area in central Japan. And, sometimes like I'm going for my daily walk and I'll pass a house and there's like someone growing some vegetables and they're like, oh, hang on a minute, let me get you a bag of potatoes.
Oh, very
Yeah.
kind.
All right. When even if you like, I think Japanese and British people, there's a lot of commonalities. Like, there's a dance of politeness. It's like, no, 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 you don't need to. And they're
Yeah.
like, no, no, no. Well, we're going to throw onions in now. It's like, oh my goodness, what is going on here?
Like when someone bumps into you, you normally just say, "Oh, I'm sorry," even if it's not your fault. It's like, oh.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
It's a little different in the States, especially where I'm at. I mean, it's you get like some nice, like what I call countryside areas where they have nice houses and they keep their yards up and things like that. And then we have some parts around me that, if you drive through, like say 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning, they got some guy standing out on his porch in tidy whities drinking a beer, and you're like going, well, we need to lock the doors. Let's just keep on going. I think we've hit the end of the road here, and it's just like, what the hell? And then you count your blessings, but shit, if they raise my rent over here that much money, my landlords live in Austin, but the Yelp and the I guess the power of social media would probably, because it's an apartment, would probably stop that, especially if they went up that kind of money. The water part of the rent has gone up dramatically in the last couple months. It's doubled, and so we've recently had inspectors coming through to make sure that there's no like leaking in the toilets or the tubs or anything like that, of any type of running water. So that tells me that somebody complained in such a way that the landlord was convinced that it was probably a good idea that they hire someone to come out and do an inspection, and because they're going to probably they fear that this person is going to take it further, which means that the water company didn't go up on the water, the landlord went up on the part of the water rent.
Yeah.
Because of greed. And that's just, when you get caught, well, hopefully we'll see it come down. And they'll say, oh, we found some leaks. No, we found some greed.
Yeah.
And you got exposed.
Originally when we planned this podcast, we were going to talk about the Juniper trilogy. But then I also read I Died Too, but They Haven't Buried Me Yet, and Only the Stains Remain. So I've got to talk about those. But we've had in this last 2 hours, it's been about writing process, it's been about you, it's been about life lessons and life in general. So I think, and we kind of hinted about potentially doing this when we first started talking, but rather than in the space of 10 minutes be like, okay, let's cover 5 books, fast round, let's go. We should just get another date in the diary. And these 2 episodes are the meet Ross Jeffery
Yeah.
portion, and then we'll have the read Ross Jeffery
Oh,
portion.
that
So
sounds good.
if you're up for that, let's schedule for another conversation this month. In fact, if you're free.
Yeah. No, it should be good.
Okay, so then continuing with the we'll wrap up soon. I know it's very, very late for you. Should we wrap up right now, or can
No.
I throw a note?
Throw another whatever you want.
Okay. So we mentioned before that you're Christian. I know too that you said that one of the first films you saw was The Exorcist. I want to know, have you always been a Christian? And if Well, whether you have or haven't, when did that come into play? Does that affect your writing or your approach to writing?
So I grew up in a house where Christianity was spoken about. My dad was an orphan, and this is really convoluted, but so my dad was an orphan. He was raised in a Catholic orphanage with his brother by what was called the Sisters of Mercy. They weren't very merciful, and lots of bad stuff happened when he was there. But he was kind of brought up a Catholic, so he's always been a Catholic. Apparently, if you're born a Catholic, you're raised a Catholic, you are a Catholic. And so it was always kind of like spoken about, but he didn't go to church. My mum didn't go to church or anything like that. So I was brought up just kind of like, as I said, like no filter, like whatever you like, do what you like. Like my mum constantly refers to her influence on me being a writer because she was reading Pet Sematary when she was pregnant with me, and Amityville Horror, I think it was. I was like, it doesn't work like that, Mum, but I let her believe it. And so yeah, I just used to kind of like do what I wanted to do. Like I was just like, I would just get movies on VHS and stuff and just watch them I had a TV in my room like when I was quite young, so I had a VHS player, so I just used to watch, like get them out of the video shop or buy them in the street or whatever. And I watched everything, like just absolutely absorbed everything that was horror. So kind of God was kind of like a thing that was around, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then kind of like went all the way up to like in my 20s, I was just doing my own thing. And then like I met my wife, and then she was a Christian, and then we like just talking about it, and like spent months just kind of chatting, and like she was just I was curious. I was just like, so just tell me about this and like what you believe in, and then she gave me the Bible, so I was kind of like reading that, and then I kind of made a decision that I was just like, oh, actually, this makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of it didn't make sense. And if you've read the Bible, there are certain parts that are horrific. And I was just like, right, okay, this, like, I get this, and I really like it, and I like this, and I believe this. And I made a decision, and then I think I got baptized on my wedding day, and became what's classified as a born again Christian, and then I've just been a Christian since I got married in 2007, and it has kind of like influenced my writing in a way, because I know, like, in my kind of how my faith is, like there are other kind of spiritual realms that are going on, and like good and bad, and good versus evil, and all that kind of stuff. I don't ram it down anyone's throat, because I think anyone's allowed to believe whatever they want to believe. It's not my place to judge, and if you have a faith or no faith, you're as equal as anybody else. We've gone through some stuff recently that's kind of got my wife questioning stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that. Which has then got me kind of thinking likewise. So it is, my faith is strong. Like I talk to God all the time, and I try to use, because I don't like writing stuff like that's not real, in the sense of, sorry to break anyone's illusions, but like vampires and werewolves and zombies and things like that, like that stuff doesn't scare me, because I know it's not real. But like, for instance, like possession or something like that, someone losing their agency really scares me. Like the fact that I could wake up tomorrow and not be who I am today, like that is something that's like terrifies me. But also kind of like just like spiritual stuff is kind of like that scares me as well. And like, so watching The Exorcist when I was a kid and then becoming a Christian, I was like, bloody hell, like let's make sure we don't end up that way. And then I was just like, yeah. So I tried to kind of put a bit of faith in. I don't want to ram it down anyone's necks, but like there is some good stuff in the Bible and some good teachings and some good like parables and things like that. So I sometimes like to link that into my work because people have faith, whether that's a faith in their own ability or the faith of the Bible or the faith in crystals or whatever like that. So I like to talk about faith because faith is such a wide scope of things that people believe in, and I'm not going to rubbish anybody's faith. But like I love the fact that sometimes that can be used in a book as a weapon or as a crutch or as a weakness. Like I quite like that aspect of it, and I love biblical passages, so sometimes I'll incorporate those into my writing as well. But like the Lord will fight for you, you need to be still. That phrase comes up a lot because it's got quite a lot of sentimental value. Well, it means a lot to us. So when my wife was pregnant with our second child, Sophie, my wife has said that you have placenta previa, which means basically the placenta is low and it's covering where the baby's going to come out. So if you had a natural birth, it would rupture the placenta and then you'd bleed out and die. So they said, so what we'll do, we'll get you in for a cesarean. So we were like, okay, that's great. So booked in for a cesarean, went to the pre-op meeting, and they did another scan, and they were like, oh, we've done a scan, and we've realised that the placenta's moved, so you can actually have a natural birth if you like, but if you go for a cesarean, it will be an elected cesarean. So we were like, right, okay. And they're like, go away and think about it and then come back to us. So we went outside and we didn't know what to do. Like we were like, well, cesarean's quite cool because we've got a date, a time, it's all ready to go. Like if you went naturally, we might not know when it comes. So and then we were just like, yeah, but like we could just go natural, saves you being cut open, all this kind of stuff. So then we just prayed about it. And then like we just sat there for like on a bus stop, just waiting and just praying and just like, okay, right. Because we didn't know what to do, so we were just like asking God, we were like, what should we do? So we just sat there for a bit, and then we were like, right, okay, we're going to go for the cesarean. So then we went back in and said, look, we're going to go for the cesarean because that's what we think is the right thing to do. So he was like, okay, that's fine. We'll mark it down. It's going to be an elective cesarean. So okay. And then went back, had the cesarean, and my wife kind of like bled out. And then she had to have a blood transfusion on the table and all this kind of stuff. And then got all stitched up and my daughter was born, everything was fine, went into the room. And then we were the doctor who saw us originally, who said like have a natural birth, came round and was like, well, it's a good job you went for the cesarean because if you had a natural birth, you would have both died. I was just like, what the hell? Like what? You were telling us to have and he was like, yeah, the placenta was still in the wrong place, and when we did the cesarean, obviously it ruptured and we lost like loads of blood, and I was just like, this is madness. And then that's kind of like the verse that came to me is from Exodus, and it was just that verse, and I was just like, we didn't know what to do, so we just sat in silence and let God move, and that's kind of basically saved my family. But yeah, it's great. Like I love talking about it. I love kind of, and what I love as well is that I've reached out a couple of times to some authors because I know they've been having a bad time and just said, look, if you need me to pray about anything, just let me know. And I don't know if you have a faith or not. Just let me know if there's anything you need me to pray about. And then, and authors have been really kind and gracious and come back and been like, yeah, could you pray about this? And I've gone and done that. And then some have come back and said, yeah, I'm a Christian as well, but like I don't talk about it. And it's yeah, it's cool. Like, it's something I love to talk about, and I've written an article for, can't remember who it was, but I wrote an article about faith in horror and stuff, which I think is linked on my website. But
I think it's on Lit Reactor.
yes, Lit Reactor, that's it. But yeah, so like I love it, and I love kind of religious horror. Like, that is like, oh yes. And like I remember watching, like, The Exorcist was my favorite film forever, and then like End of Days. I know it's got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, but it was really good. And then like Stigmata and like Possession stuff, like all of that. Just, oh yeah, it's good.
Wow, just kind of like what happened with the landlord. I'm almost rendered speechless from what happened with your wife giving birth, and for the doctor to casually
Mhm.
say, "Well,
Yeah,
good job you did the cesarean." It's like, hang on a minute, you were the one saying not to.
yeah, it's
Uh,
madness. Yeah,
and it's, it's terrifying, the risk of pregnancy, now to this day, because I think sometimes we take it for granted that it will be safe,
yeah.
in 2025 or in the 2010s as it was. But yeah, oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad that it all worked out anyway. Much like the landlord situation,
Yeah.
that's the only response you can really give. Um, but yeah, I've had an interesting relationship with religion and with God and with spirituality, and like to I don't even know at this point what I do and don't believe. I was raised in a Christian household. Then, when I went to university, I went more into atheism and almost anti theism. There's a lot of problems with the organized aspect
Yeah.
of religion.
Yes.
Um, and I don't know. Since the bad things that I went through, as I mentioned 5 years ago, like, I kind of trust in the universe to look after me and ask for guidance, and
Yeah.
I don't know what is and isn't true.
I think
I
it's
know that my mother's happy that I ask the universe for guidance more, because she's like, yeah,
I think it's
she'll
less
she'll
than having a religion. It's more, I would say, I have a faith, as in that I believe in something that I believe in, and you can call that Christian, because yeah, Jesus and God and stuff like that. But like, my faith is quite a simple faith compared to like the churches that I've been a part of and like things like that. Like, I believe the things that I believe in, um, and I'm kind of classified as a Christian. But like, some of the kind of churches out there that call themselves Christians are just the complete opposite in their doctrine and what they like preach and do and say, and I'm just like, yeah, you can have your Christianity, but this is my faith and this is what I believe, and I'm happy believing what I believe. Um, yeah, it's a strange world, but who are we to
yeah.
judge anybody? We just do what you got to do.
Mhm.
All right. Well, in terms of what we have to do now, we have to wrap up, but we are going to get you back on the show in a few weeks to talk in depth about some of the wonderful books that you've written. But this has been an enormous pleasure, really getting to know you and to get an insight into both your life and your writing method. So I'm excited to talk again, because I mean, we've barely even touched on I Died Too, but They Haven't Buried Me Yet. And there's a whole kind of story behind the story, writing that
Yeah,
in sync with Josh Malaman writing incidents around the house. So there's a lot of good stuff for people to look forward to.
yeah, they better tune in for that one. It's going to be a cracker.
Oh, yeah. Well, in the interim, where can listeners connect with you? And listeners that have been listening closely, they may already know because you mentioned the social media platforms that you're on and not on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on 2 social media platforms, Instagram and Blue Sky, and I think both of them are Ross Jeffery author. I also have a website. If you just type Ross Jeffery author in, it will come up. And yeah, I think that is about it. Obviously, I'm on Goodreads and Amazon and stuff like that, but they're the places that I frequent. Well, not often. When I feel like it, I'll go on there.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners and viewers?
I knew you were going to ask this. My final thoughts would be: don't be a dick, which I think is always good. And then also just, I think, believing in yourself. I think, if there's anybody out there that has struggled with writing or, feels creative, just for any creative really, that has either been shat on or told they're not good enough, or is doubting that they belong, like, just ignore that noise and just do what you want to do and write the books you want to write, create the art you want to write, and don't let somebody else dictate what that's going to be. Because I believe everybody is capable of creating something, whatever that is. And it might be outside of the creative field. You might be great at creating an amazing home life for your children, or being able to, plant a garden or something like that. Like, I just believe that everybody can do what they put their mind to, and they shouldn't let outside noise or interference or jealousy or whatever get in the way of that. And from what I have gone through, if I was a weaker person than I am, or a younger person than I was when I've got that rejection stuff about Juniper, I probably would have given up. Like, it would have been like, because that person was a published author, an academic, and they were just reiterating to me all the failings that I thought I had as a child, and it was just, I felt like I hadn't gone anywhere. But I was older, I had this, the confidence to believe in myself, and I had an amazing wife and friends that said, actually, no, this is good, carry on. I think if people just continue to believe in themselves and surround themselves with people that they can kind of talk to and connect with and share with, just keep on, because it gets easier.
All right. That is a fantastic note to go out on. And thank you again for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been a fan of the show for years, so it's lovely to talk to you face to face.
Oh, yeah, definitely.